All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Doctors Changing Medicine podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Linda Street. She is a maternal fetal medicine specialist out of Augusta, Georgia, and she is the founder of Simply Street MD. And we're going to be talking all things contract negotiations today, which is something I don't think we really have a very good grip on as physicians, but she's going to fix that today. So, welcome to the show, Doc.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. This is my favorite thing to talk about, and pretty much no one else's.
Well, there you go. And that's why I'm happy you're here. We're going to have a very fun conversation. So, little thing that doesn't have anything to do with anything, but my first daughter was diagnosed with congenital diaphragmatic hernia when I was 20 weeks pregnant. So just say that I love MFM docs like from the depth of my heart. So let's put it let's put it that way. But she's 13 now. She's totally healthy, no complications, none of that. So, but I love MFM docs. I really do. So my first question to you is, how do you go from MFM to setting up a company to help doctors negotiate? Like, what happened?
Right? You sign a crap contract.
Ah, I want to hear about it now.
Yes. So I designed the company I needed, basically, which I think is a lot of our entrepreneurial journeys. Like we find something that we're like, oh my God, I wish I would have had that. And then when we realize how much of a deficit that was, we try to fill the hole because we're problem solvers by nature,
Yes.
right? And so I actually signed my contract. So MFM is a 3-year fellowship after OB. And my husband is very attached to Augusta, Georgia. So I signed my contract at the end of my first year. So I was still 2 years from being
Oh,
done.
wow. Okay.
Mhm. Problem number one. Um, problem number two is the only people I ran my contract by were my attendings. So I was like, well, they're really smart and they know what I do. And so, of course, they're going to have great advice. Well, all of your attendings by default are going to be in academics. And so I think they have a good idea of that world. They don't always have a great idea of what people make outside of academics. I was actually taking an academic job, so they had a little bit more to give as far as that was concerned. But I was taking a very different kind of academic job. Like I was going to be one of two versus there were like 12 of them. And so it was just a little bit different position and a little different kind of hospital. And so problem number two was the only people I asked for advice were people with a very similar worldview to each other. Then I signed the contract. Well, actually, problem number three, I did one more thing wrong. I asked for a stipend because I was a fellow. And so I was like, oh, it'd be so much nicer to make like 60,000 a year instead of 50. And so I asked for a stipend for the remainder of my fellowship since I knew I had 2 whole years left. I was told they couldn't do a stipend. So one of the things I did do right is I was like, well, what else could you do to make this better? And they were able to give me an extra 50,000 a year. So that was nice. That was good. I was still at like the 20th percentile or something, which I didn't know at the time. In hindsight, I was like, oh God, you signed what? But at the time I felt like I had a big win. And so after that, I was just like, okay, let's just sign. My husband is a hairdresser. And so the lawyer I got to look at my contract next problem, I can't remember what number I'm on yet, but is an international contract lawyer for businesses. And in my
Wow.
mind, I was like, a lawyer's a lawyer. She looks at contracts. This is a contract. Awesome. So she looked at it. She said, nothing's illegal. And I signed it. I didn't learn until later that you probably need a healthcare attorney who actually understands healthcare contracts because they're a little bit different than like mergers and acquisitions and other kinds of contracts that this gal did. So while nothing was illegal or like really I cannot speak, egregious, it's Friday. Well, nothing was a big problem. There were just a lot of things that she didn't think to look for or didn't think to pick up on because she doesn't look at healthcare contracts all the time. So that was my next mistake. Fast forward a couple of years, I am about a year and a half into the job. And my I had one partner is an older white gentleman, and he's a lovely human, but our salaries were all posted online. So once I figured this out, I'm like, I wonder what he makes. Well, I'll let you guess about how much more he made than me. Want to take a stab?
50,000?
150,000.
No!
150,000 more a year. And he should have been making more than me. He had seniority, he had administrative responsibilities. There were a lot of really good reasons why he should make more money than me. There were not a lot of really good reasons why he should make six figures more than me, because we were seeing pretty similar clinical volumes. And at the end of the day, experience doesn't change how you're paid for seeing patients. So revenue wise, I was actually bringing in, I think at some points, a little more because I was the young female MFM. And so I had a fairly loyal client base. So when I figured out that, that was a little bit of a blow to my ego. And I decided that that was going to have to change. So I actually got another job offer, and it was for, I can't remember, I was making 350 at the time, and the job offer I got was for 475. So it was actually a job I didn't want. Like, I knew I didn't want this job. There were a lot of problems that made it not an ideal job, but I took that. I got coached by a life coach. I was in a weight loss program at the time. And it's amazing how mindset work is really helpful in these things, because she helped me work through a lot of my hangups on even approaching the situation, because my gut reaction was anger and this is not right. And I should go in there guns blazing and just full of fire. Probably not the best approach. So she talked me off my ledge a little. We did some mindset work and really worked on approaching it from a place of, we're partners. They benefit and profit a lot off of my being a part of this team. And in exchange, I benefit. But that needs to be a more even relationship. So that was kind of the thought process that was going on when I actually approached it. And I got a $65,000 raise in academics.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
That is good.
It was good. It felt really good too. Long story short, that was not the only reason that job had problems. So I ended up leaving a year later anyway. But it really, I left knowing that it was a fit problem, not a money problem. And it was really helpful, I think, to have that skill set when I went into my next contract negotiation. And so that's how the business came about. That was where the idea started. And then I had a 1-year non-compete, needed to stay in the community. So I had a year where I did locums. And for various reasons, there was a little gap in between me practicing clinically at the beginning of that year. And so I was like, what am I going to do with my time? Because relaxing is not really on my list of things to do most days. Nobody ever relates to that.
I relate to that.
So I was like, let's start a business. Like, I had gone to life coach school training in the meantime, because I actually did it for personal use. Like, I thought I would just do it so I would develop the skills better to use for myself. I had zero intentions of it being a business. But the more I thought of it, I was like, a lot of my friends are coming to me for this. Maybe that could be a business. And so while I had too much time on my hands, I learned how to build a website and I learned how to do these things, and actually got some clients and found that there are some kind of recurring themes that come up again and again and again, even if the negotiations are by themselves a little bit different. And I used all of those things and got a much better deal on my current gig. I work 4 days a week, 8 to 5. I don't take call. I do some telemedicine on the side on Fridays that I got permission in my job contract to do with a different hospital system.
Wow.
And I feel like I have a lot more autonomy over my role as a physician because I knew how to advocate for myself.
Okay, so I'm going to take you all the way back because this is so yummy and so juicy. Okay, so I'm a physician, right? And let's say, I'm coming out of residency. I'm ready to get my first real doctor job, right? What are those pitfalls? Because you said you noticed some recurring themes, right? So what are those pitfalls that you see that doctors fall into all the time, almost like it's a rite of passage? You know what I mean? What are they?
Yeah, I think the first one is applying for like 1 or 2 jobs, like not applying broadly, because it feels like, oh, well, this is a good job. Why would I apply to 5? And I think some of us marry our high school sweetheart. He's the first guy we ever dated. It was a great choice, or gal we ever dated. A lot of us have to date a lot of frogs before we get to Prince Charming or Princess Charming. Jobs are the same way, right? Like, if you go in the first one's going to look really shiny compared to your resident job. Almost everything looks really shiny compared to your resident job. And so I think by not looking at several options, first off, you don't really know what's out there as a resident because all you've been exposed to your whole training is academic medicine. So you have blinders on. And I'm not anti-academics. Like I said, I started my career that way and actually had the intention of staying in academics. The politics were a little much for me, so I ended up deciding to shift gears. But you have a very one-sided view of what does it look like to be my specialty. And so by interviewing broadly, and even if you know you want to do one kind of medicine, just look at one job that's different than that. Just be willing to evaluate that as an option. Because then you see, oh, I like this piece of that, or oh, I like that. And if nothing else, it can help you really tweak the job you do want to fit you instead of tweaking yourself to fit it. So I think applying broadly is the first big mistake that a lot of people out of training do. The second one is going to be mostly mindset based. So medical training has a lot of indoctrination involved in it. I don't think we ever thought that was true. And so as a medical student, you're told over and over again, you're so lucky to have this spot. Like we rejected 10 people for you to have this spot. You get to residency, and I feel like this is becoming worse. Every year when the match happens, I'm like horrified by how much harder this is and how many quality applicants aren't being matched up to places. And so you get to residency and they do that same thing. Like, you're so lucky to have that spot. If you don't want to do it, 5 other people are happy to. Right? If you don't want to be abused, if you don't want us to treat you like crap, other people will, right? And so we go into it with this indoctrination of, I should just be so thankful to have this opportunity. And it's not that you shouldn't be grateful to have opportunities, but you need to shift because when you become the attending, you're the talent. When you go into that attending job, there is more value that you're bringing that not that many people can offer in the same way you can. And so it's not a matter of there are 10 people just like you who could fill this job. It's a matter of there are 10 jobs just like this one that could be a good fit for you. And I think making that shift is really important so that you don't undervalue yourself.
Love it. So interview broadly, interview even in spaces that you think you might not work in so you can get a different feel, and then understand your value. So let me piggyback back off of that. So when it comes to understanding your value, one part of it is, I'm an OBGYN or I'm a pediatrician, and that's my clinical skill set, right?
Right.
But I think a lot of times as doctors, we don't realize that that's not our only skill set, right? Like when we come to the table, when we come to a job, I'm not just bringing my clinical skill set, I'm bringing all of me. And there are all these other things that I have. So how do you show people how to take inventory of their value?
Right. So I actually get really nerdy on this part. When I'm working through clients, I actually have them draw a Venn diagram. Well, I have a worksheet that already has it pre-drawn. I don't make them come up with their own circles, but you can at home draw a Venn diagram from like 2nd grade science. And on one side, I want you to list all the reasons that you bring value. And it could be things like I speak Spanish and I could go to this outreach clinic and be able to communicate with the patients. It could be something like I have an MBA or I have leadership skills. I talk well with other people. I play nicely with others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the big things I actually used as leverage in my last negotiation had nothing to do with my clinical skill set, but everything to do with me as a human. Because with leverage, you want to maximize their perceived loss if they don't get you. So you want them to feel like no other doctor who's a pediatrician will do for this position. No other doctor that's a radiologist, an obstetrician, whatever you do is a good fit for this position. I need Dr. Una or I need Dr. Street, right? And the way you do that is show them how you're such a great fit for that job. The way I did that is because I already had relationships with the referring doctors. So as a subspecialist, my entire business relies on referring physicians sending me their patients. And so it's extremely valuable to my employer if I already have those relationships that take time to build, right? Because those relationships directly equal revenue to them. To me, It means I've already established a relationship and an open communication dialogue that they know I'm going to take great care of their patients. And so everybody wins. So that was actually something I used a lot to get more out of my negotiation. And that's not something that you really think about
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
when you're negotiating. So I want you to list all the things you have to offer on one side. On the other side, list all the things that they're looking for. And people are like, well, how do I do that? And I think the best way to do that is really to ask yourself and ask them, like, use these as interview prompts. They think you're really interested, win, bonus. And it gives you information so you can use it against them, double bonus, right? So when you're in the interview with them, ask them, like, why is this position open? What are you looking for? If you had a dream candidate, how would that person look? How would they fit into whatever pre-existing structure or group or practice or whatever is already present? Because if you start asking those questions, you're going to get answers that let you know what is valuable to them. And asking, like, where do you see this being in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years? Right? Because once you have that information, you can go home when you're not like sitting in front of them and sit there and think, okay, how do I fit into this picture? What do I have that can get them to that goal better than somebody with just this clinical skill set? Not to undervalue your clinical skill set, it's valuable, but you want to stand out as why I'm the perfect fit. And the more you can sell yourself from their mindset and what they're looking for, the easier it's going to be to do. So if their goal is breaking into a certain community and you have ties to that community, flaunt that. If their goal is publications and that's something you're strong at, flaunt it. You know, if you're super efficient and they just want productivity and they want to grow the clinic, flaunt it, right? And just present it in the sense of, look, I'm looking to hit the ground running. I want to build a practice. Growth is really important to me. I love seeing patients. I want to be the premier practice or whatever. Like, sell what you can do for them. And all of a sudden, you look more valuable to them than being only your clinical skill set.
I cannot tell you how much I love this, right? Now, first of all, because the picture you're painting is a picture of physicians owning their value and realizing that you're a boss. And this is not to say we're going around, making life miserable for employers or anything, because a true negotiation creates a win win situation, right? Where it's a win for you, it's a win for me. But I love all of this. And you guys heard her when it comes to those extra skills that you don't, like you have a YouTube channel and a huge following. That's the thing. You have a huge social media following. That's the thing. Like her, you build referrals, referral system. You have all these friends and colleagues you networked with, and you know that you can get a practice busy in no time because of all the people you know. Leverage all of it. Talk about all of it. Own all of it. This just makes me so happy. Like if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can't see me smiling. Those of you on YouTube are going like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." Okay, now there's a doctor listening who is close to signing a contract or is right in the middle of an interview process, and they feel like I just have to accept this deal, right? And they can hear you. They can hear what you're saying. They're probably going like maybe for my next job, right? So how do you help people get around the mindset of this? Like you're never at a loss. There's never just one option. You don't have to accept a bad deal because it's the quote unquote only deal, because there are other deals. Like what would you say to that person?
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it's being just open to it. Like the job I ended up taking wasn't actually even a clinic when I quit my last job. So I actually quit my job with no idea what I was going to do next. I was like, I have a year to burn a non-compete. I'll figure it out sometime in the next year. So I think being open to the fact that there are possibilities that you might not be able to see until you're willing to see them. I think that's one piece. The other piece is a lot of times our brains will tell us like, okay, I can accept this and it's going to be okay. It's a decent job. It's lukewarm. It's cool. It's fine. It'll be okay. I'll be okay. And our brain tells us this lie that we're choosing comfort instead of the discomfort of negotiating and advocating for ourselves. But that's not really true. What you're trading is the discomfort of negotiating and advocating for yourself now because it's a new skill set, or the discomfort later of being undervalued. Because when you show up to that job that was fine and you find out that your partner's making 20,000 a year more than you, or you find out that so and so gets 2 extra weeks of vacation, or that there's no respect for your personal time and there are no boundaries and you're expected to answer the phone 24/7, or whatever it is you didn't negotiate for, you're going to be uncomfortable because there's always going to be like that, oh, maybe I should have asked for that. Or one big thing in my contract that was non-financial was we changed a few little words on outreach clinics. So on the outreach clinic, the contract originally read something to the effect of as deemed reasonable by employer. Well, I never assume anybody else is reasonable. And so their version of reasonable and mine might be very different. And so we swapped it to say mutually agreed upon. So I know if they open a clinic an hour away and I don't want to drive an hour, that I don't have to, right? I've had so many clients and friends end up in a job and all of a sudden they're commuting an hour and a half to go to a clinic where they make less money, they're less productive, they see like 4 or 5 patients because it's brand new, and so it's a really great one to throw that junior new partner to, and they're really unhappy with that. Whereas had they known that was part of the job to begin with, they could have either protected themselves from it or said, look, this is a place that I understand why it's valuable to the organization, but at the end of the day, if I'm on a productivity contract, I'm going to lose money by serving that population. I want to serve those patients. I want to bring them access. How can we bridge that gap? Can those RVUs from that site be worth something different than the main site RVUs? Can there be some type of incentive pay for the portion of my time to protect me from losing money while we build that up? Whatever, like you can be creative with it, but if you don't think about those things and advocate for yourself ahead of time, they're going to be happy to send you to Timbuktu and they don't really care how much you're making. So you have to care for yourself.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. That's so good. Okay, so let's say you met a resident, and you guys were getting the elevator, and you're like, "Oh, so what's going on with you?" Said, "Oh, I just got this amazing job offer, and I have the contract, so I'm taking a look at it with my husband tonight, and we're gonna sign it because I've already made my decision. I'm gonna do this job." And you guys got in the elevator, and you could tell her, "These are the 3 things you have to look for in that contract. Like these are the, I can only give you 3, right? We're in this elevator." What are those top 3 things that you would tell her?
Right. I mean, I think salary is important. So you need to know what the market data is for your specialty. We can go off on a tangent about how it's crap that different specialties are paid differently. But at the end of the day, make sure you're getting the most reasonable pay you can get for what you do. So I think salary definitely comes into the mix. What does your day-to-day look like? What does the schedule look like? I've had a few friends that have ended up in situations where they joined a practice and they were on 1 in 5 call. That's not so bad. OB call is not usually like sleep all night and then you wake up and answer a couple of nurse messages on your EMR type call. OB call is often you get up and you go deliver babies at 2 a.m. because that's when they like to come. And so if you start off 1 in 5, that feels pretty good. And then you don't have a call floor written into your contract, and all of a sudden 3 of your partners leave. Guess who's now 1 in 2 and has no protection, right? And that can be miserable. So looking at the schedule to make sure there are safeguards in place in case circumstances change, because life happens, and making sure that it's something that feels like a good fit for you, because schedule is really negotiable too. My employer would love for me to work 5 days a week. I am the only MFM in my practice. They would be thrilled to death if I would agree to that 5th day, but it's a hard no for me. I need that day for my business. I need that day for my sanity. And let's be real about our 8-hour days. They're 10. So I'm already working 40 hours a week, working 4 days a week. I don't want to work that 5th. It is a deal breaker for me. So I negotiated that into my contract. So salary, schedule, and then the third, I'll go on a soapbox here. You've got to look at that non-compete and try to make sure that it's as least restrictive as possible. because having spent a year away from, at the time, my 4 and 7-year-old, for every other week for a year, I was in and out of town. And then the pandemic hit. My husband really loved that he signed up for being home with kids all day during a pandemic by himself. Whoops. So having done that, I would never sign a non-compete where I had no other options. And a lot of us are going to be in positions. I actually have a non-compete, but it doesn't really restrict me from being able to do what I need to do. And so I was comfortable with signing it. But I think really trying to make sure that either you can get it to something you're comfortable with, that you could stay in your home and still practice, or getting it to a place where you're comfortable knowing that, okay, I could do XYZ for this time frame instead. And I'm going to be sneaky and throw a fourth.
Go for it.
I can't help it. So the other thing that popped up for me, and I'm having a brain fart now because I got distracted on the non-compete because it's such a soapbox for me. I really think they should be eliminated completely. But the other thing is just to make sure you're covered as an insurance policy if you leave. So tail insurance is really great to ask for, because while we would all like to assume that our first job is forever, 50% of us are going to leave in the first 3 to 5 years. So making sure that you're not necessarily planning to leave, but that you have an exit strategy is always wise. And sometimes people will get really huffy puffy if you ask for these things, because they'll say something to you along the lines of, well, are you planning on leaving? And my response to that is always that I'm invested in this practice. I really want to make this a forever job. But realistically, I understand that life happens and circumstances outside of our control can pop up. And I just would feel so much better knowing that I had a little bit of a buffer should something happen. Right? Like, what if my parents get sick, or blame it on something like that? Because those are real things that happen. People who leave jobs don't always leave because they dislike their job.
I love all of that. That is so good. I hope you guys got that. That's a whole conference in itself, but this is so good. All right, Dr. Street, where do people find you? If they're like, this is amazing, I want more, where do they find you?
So if you want to hear me talk, we can go into greater detail on all these topics. I have a podcast called Simply Worth It. So go check me out over there. And if you want to come ask questions, go to my contact form on www.simplystreetmd.com. And it's street like you live on one, which is really nice and easy. That's why I took his name. And you can come find me there, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Love it. And I know that you have a course where you help people go through all of this. And so tell us a little bit about that. And I think you have a deal for us or something, the listeners. I don't know. Tell us all about it.
Yes, ma'am. So as you know, there is, you can kind of choose your own adventure, right? Like, you can totally listen, and I'm sure yours is very similar to this. You can listen to my podcast and get all the information you need to do this yourself. But it's going to take initiative on your end to really put things together and compile them in a way that's efficient and serves you. And that is totally effective. My podcast is my good stuff. But the course kind of fills the gap for somebody who's like, I just want you to take me through a proven process efficiently so I can get this done. And that's kind of where the course comes in. We go over some of the same topics, but in a very efficient, organized, down and dirty, this is what you got to do way. And then my course also comes with, at this point in time, a 45-minute one-on-one session with me, so that after you've done some of the group sessions, after you've gone through the materials, if you're like, but these are some things about my unique situation that I might not want to talk about at a group call, and I really would like your feedback on, we get on the phone and on Zoom and we get it done. And so the course is at $19.97. You get MGMA information with it, so you know what you should be making. And I think it's a no-brainer. You should make 20, 30,000 more after you take that course. And special today, because y'all are Dr. Una's friends, and so am I, if you sign up through her link, then you will get access to not only the 2020 MGMA data, which is what's currently out and reflects 2019, the 2021 data will pop out kind of mid-end of May. And so as soon as that comes out, you'll get that data as well for free as a bonus so that you can kind of compare what the 2 points are. So you can go in with kind of the strongest information of your market value.
I love it. Thank you. All right, guys, you got it. Okay. So, Dr. Street, that's her course. And if you're going to negotiate, I mean, like, there is so much pain and suffering that goes with negotiating contracts when it's done wrong. She's seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it. I do think her course is a no-brainer. So listen to her podcast. So you don't. It's this is not mandatory for everybody. You can do the podcast, but if you're like, no, I really want to do a deeper dive, and I mean that's amazing that you do the one-on-one call with it. Then check it out. So Doctors Changing medicine.com/negotiate, because of course what would be a better link than that? Okay, so this is an affiliate link, which does mean I get some kind of commission if you do buy the course using that, but that will go to support this amazing show, so why not, right? Now, Dr. Street, I tell everybody who listens to this podcast to share it. And the reason why is because I'm like, this is a movement. There are a million physicians. If we don't like the way the system is, we can change it. There's literally a million of us. So after this whole conversation, what would be the reason you'd give someone to say, listen, you have to share this episode with every doctor you know? What would you tell them?
Because we're awesome. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the most important reason is because at the end of the day, we're the foundation of medicine. And as medicine has become more and more corporate, we've seen all these administrators, CEOs making $30 million while physicians are taking pay cuts during the pandemic. And that's not okay. Beyond that, the inequity in pay in medicine is atrocious. You can see it on every level. You see it based on race, based on gender. You see it in specialties. If a specialty becomes more female predominant, the salary overall for men and women in that specialty go down. I'm an obstetrician, you're a pediatrician, so we get this. And that's unacceptable. And if we don't stand up to that by advocating for ourselves, we're complicit in the process. And I'm not comfortable with that. And so I don't think you should be either, one person's opinion. So I think we can't afford to ignore this for the most part at all. And one little side note I did want to put on the course, because some of you who are residents and fellows are like, yeah, 1997, that's nice. Thanks, Dr. Street. I do have a scholarship program for trainees that brings it down to 3 payments of $249. So please don't not protect yourself just because you're a trainee and you feel like that's too much to swallow.
Wow. Okay, so first of all, that is very generous of you to help the residents, because I think residents are the most at risk, right? Because it's like, whatever the offer is, it is better than residency until until 3 months later, right? And you're like, okay, what did I just do? So I love that you're able to support them in that way. And then your answer to my question, I was thinking it was going to be good. I didn't think it would be that good. That is so good. You heard our people. Go share it. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate this. I think this is so impactful. And for everyone listening, you're part of a movement. So let's do this together. And I will see you on the next episode of the Doctors Changing Medicine podcast.